Have you ever wondered who would make a Spider-Man Mount Rushmore? Okay, maybe you haven't, but here's a thought experiment for you. Who would be on a spider-powered people Mount Rushmore and why? Let's dive right into it. First and foremost, I just want to give a shout out to Boomazuma, as I was inspired by his two amazing YouTube videos on the Mount Rushmores of superheroes and supervillains. They're great videos. I highly recommend you go watch them after you've watched this video because they are awesome, and even subscribe to his channel. I'll leave a link in the description down below. I saw his videos and I thought, I could do this, but for Spider-Man. I mean, we are a Spider-Man channel, so, I mean, why not? So I also want to disclose this Mount Rushmore will be for people with spider powers. This is specifically a spider-powered people Mount Rushmore. So that includes the likes of Peter, Cindy Moon, those kind of characters. It doesn't include different versions of Peter Parker like Toby, Andrew, and Tom. Because let's be honest, if it did, the Mount Rushmore would literally just all be Peter Parker. This means there also won't be any Gwen Stacy's or Norman Osborn's, but if you want me to do separate videos on Spider-Man love interests and Spider-Man villains, I'm also happy to do that. Just let me know in the comment section down below. With that out of the way, let's get straight into this. So in terms of spider-powered people, we have 4 spots to fill in, and I think 3 of those are fairly obvious and kind of pick themselves. Peter Parker, for obvious reasons, is one of them. He has had the most stories, the best stories, and without him, none of the others would even be possible. This is the most obvious pick on this entire list. Without Peter Parker, it's not even really a Spider-Man Mount Rushmore. The second Spider-Man on a Spider-Man Mount Rushmore is Miles Morales. His surgence in the last few years has been that large, and his impressions that he's made on general audiences is undeniably huge. You can't argue against it. Not to mention, he's had so many exposures to the mainstream media through the Spider-Verse films and obviously in the Insomniac Spider-Man games, and he's appeared in multiple TV shows, and he's had so many comic runs as well. He's even got a really good comic run alongside Peter Parker going on right now, The Spectacular Spider-Man, which the first issue was amazing. You can watch my video on it here. The third obvious pick, I believe, is Spider-Gwen. Similar to Miles, Spider-Gwen is a character that had a very quick uprising. Out of the 3 that I have listed, I'd say Gwen is probably the only one out of them that you could maybe make a case against, but I have my reasons. Not only is she very popular in the mainstream media, but her popularity was that vast after her creation that she is one of the only reasons why the Spider-Verse comics were as popular as they were. And since those comics have gone on to influence so much modern Spider-Man media in the last few years, I think Gwen's presence in that has to earn her a spot. Not to mention, she was the first in a long line of Spider-Man variants that took original characters from the Spider-Man mythos and gave them powers. Like, for example, after Gwen Stacy got a variant, we then got a variant with Uncle Ben with spider powers, etc. We've also had Mary Jane Watson as Spinneret. We've had many different variants following the creation of Spider-Gwen that have led to other Spider-Man characters getting spider powers. Not to mention her iconic costume as well. People will say that it helped that Gwen Stacy was a fan favorite character before Spider-Gwen, but we have to remember that Spider-Gwen adds so many new layers to the character that she's practically a brand new character altogether. Her roles in the Spider-Verse films are pretty large as well, and they're already setting up the next set of Spidey fans in the next generation to be conditioned to assume Peter, Miles, and Gwen are a trio. Even though it's just a kids show, Spidey and His Amazing Friends is the first proper Spider-Man kids show where they have Peter, Miles, and Gwen all together as one unit. Kids that grow up with this show will have this as their understanding as to who are the main 3 Spider people. And I think we're going to start seeing this bleed into wider media in the next 10 to 15 years or so. So to top it all off, that is pretty much why I chose them 3 as the main 3 on this Spider-Man Mount Rushmore. But this is where it gets really interesting. Who gets the 4th spot? Who is the 4th most important Spider character in, well, since Spider-Man's creation? Well, there are multiple characters that have very strong cases. But first of all, let's define what we are looking for to be able to go on the Mount Rushmore of Spider-Man characters. Based on who we've got already, the main attributes are legacy, influence, fan recognition, and what they bring to the table in terms of stories and story potential. I feel like these are the main components of what we're looking for that 4th spot alongside the 3 that we've already listed. And I feel like there are 5 potential candidates that could take this 4th spot. And they are Jessica Drew, aka Spider-Woman, Miguel O'Hara, aka Spider-Man 2099, Ben Reilly, aka Scarlet Spider, Cindy Moon, aka Silk, and Cassandra Webb, aka Madam Web. All 5 of these characters have had enough impact since their creation to be able to deserve a spot alongside these other 3 characters. But obviously we can only give it to one, so which one will it be? The first one that I would want to eliminate from them is actually Madam Web. Madam Web was great during her introduction, and her character was definitely helped along by her popularity from the 90s Spider-Man cartoon. But unfortunately, her solo movie that came out this February was so bad that it really tarnished her legacy, especially especially with general audiences. This character will not see the light of day on the big screen for a very long time because of that movie, since it damaged her reputation that much. The next Spider character that I'm going to unfortunately eliminate from this list is Cindy Moon, aka Silk. Now don't get me wrong, I love Cindy Moon, she is one of my favourite characters from the Spider-Man mythos, however, I don't believe she deserves that 4th spot. I think it's just too early to consider her for a Mount Rushmore of Spider-Man characters. Like Spider-Gwen, she is a fan favourite among readers, and people love her character from the comics. And it's clear that with her appearing in Marvel Spider-Man 3 or another project down the line at Insomniac, and also getting her TV show under Amazon, her character is going to grow and grow and grow in the right direction in terms of popularity. However, she isn't quite there yet. If we were having this conversation maybe 10 years down the line, maybe she does go as that 4th spot on Mount Rushmore, but I don't believe that she is quite there just yet. So I'm gonna have to eliminate her and leave her out. Okay, so that leaves us with Miguel, Ben, and Jessica, and I feel like they are the 3 main candidates for this spot. It's a tough choice to make, and you are really running it by a fine line, deciding out of these 3. When it comes to Miguel, he's 100% helped along by the Spider-Verse films, but it wasn't like he wasn't already popular among fans before then. He'd had major roles in Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions and Edge of Time, and his original comic from the 90s was a massive hit for audiences, and it generally was considered a successful and fresh take on the Spider-Man character. Not to mention, Miguel was a major representation for Hispanics at the time. Obviously, now we have Miles Morales as well, but Miguel was influential because of this. And then of course we have Jessica Drew. She doesn't quite have the catalogue of stories that Miguel has, but she certainly carries a lot of weight in terms of the meaning that she has. She was the first female Spider character, and yes, granted, Marvel only created her, so DC didn't steal the title, but still, since then she's actually gone on to be a big part of Marvel, including joining the Avengers, her own animated TV show, and multiple comic runs. It's just a shame that in recent years, Spider-Woman's presence kind of isn't as strong as it used to be. I feel like Spider-Gwen, Cindy Moon, and a bunch of other Spider-Woman characters more take the limelight now than Jessica Drew does, and it kind of feels like Marvel wants to home in on those female characters rather than Jessica Drew. Which, to be fair, I prefer Spider-Gwen and Cindy Moon. I can kind of understand why, but Jessica Drew deserves to be mentioned here. Now, Miguel and Jessica are great characters, and their influence for the Spider-Man character have been felt over the last couple of decades. However, that 4th spot, I am actually going to give it to Ben Reilly, aka Scarlet Spider. Yes, that's right, Ben Reilly will be joining Peter, Miles, and Gwen in the Mount Rushmore for Spider-powered characters. Now, this was a really tough decision based on the way that his character has been handled in the last few years. Now, if this was a decision I had to make in the 90s or just post-90s, I think Ben Reilly automatically earns himself a spot on Mount Rushmore right next to Peter Parker. However, in the last few years, obviously we've had Miles, Gwen, Miguel's become more popular. It's really hard to choose Ben Reilly because his stories at the moment are so poor. However, the stories that have come before and the influence that his character has had over Spider-Man comics and just Spider-Man media in general is so large to not include him. You can't ignore the popularity and wave that Ben Reilly created when he first appeared on the scene. Of course, he was introduced during one of Marvel's most controversial stories, but his character was largely considered the highlight of that story. Marvel at the time as well was not doing great financially, and they almost filed for bankruptcy. Ben Reilly genuinely was the beacon of hope at that time, and his significance and the love that his character generated was absolutely tremendous. The Clone Saga is often let slide because of the fact that Ben Reilly was a byproduct of that story. The idea that a clone of Peter Parker sprouting into his own life and identity is so interesting for the fans. Ben Reilly would go on to have many comics to his name, and would even be a major influence for the creation of Mayday Parker, aka Spider-Girl, Peter and Mary Jane's daughter. He has since not gotten the love that he deserves in recent times, even though he was written really well prior to the last, I'd say, decade or so. However, he has made an appearance in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and is touted to have a bigger role in Beyond the Spider-Verse as well. Not to mention his 2 iconic costumes. Which superhero manages to have 2 iconic costumes? I mean, we have Batman's black and then grey and blue costume, we have Spider-Man's black and then blue and red costume, and then I guess you could say Superman's classic costume and then the black Superman costume. But apart from those characters, I don't think any other superhero that I can think of off the top of my head has 2 instantly recognizable costumes. Apart from Ben Reilly. Ben Reilly has 2 instantly recognizable costumes. He also had a really cool run in the 90s animated Spider-Man show that a lot of people will recognize him from, and it was a big part of his major exposure to casual fans. But either way, that is my Spider-Man Mount Rushmore. So we have Peter Parker, Miles Morales, Gwen Stacy, and Ben Reilly. Let me know in the comment section down below if you would change any of them and why. But in terms of my personal Mount Rushmore, I think I probably would replace Ben Reilly with either Miguel or Cindy. I do love those characters a little bit more than Ben Reilly. I'm a little bit more interested in those stories, but I can't argue with how influential Ben Reilly was, and I think you just have to give him a place on this list. Would you disagree? Like I said, let me know down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care and peace.